What's up guys? Today we're talking about how to use our fees that we gain from yield farming concentrated pools or other DeFi protocols for maximum profit. If you're new here, my name is Richard. I talk a lot about yield farming and generating passive income with crypto in my channel. And before we dive into the video, here are my open positions. You can see I'm sitting on roughly 4.8 Ethereum profit. If you add my closed positions, I'm sitting on 8.6 on the closed ones, so roughly a 13 to 14 Ethereum profit. Recently closed out this Ethereum to Sol for a nice profit, and then I hop into a new Ethereum to USDT pool. This pool is in a leverage yield farming setup, so I'm trying to make a US dollar profit with this pool and not really trying to make an Ethereum profit. So I've had a pretty decent track record when it comes to yield farming. You could see this versus HODL number. I'm beating apparent loss. If you add all of my closed positions, I've been able to do that pretty consistently here. So when we're yield farming concentrated pools, for example, Sol to Ethereum, what we do get is Sol and Ethereum in terms of fees, right? If you guys look at this ETH and Sol position that I just closed out, I deposited February 27th, and then I finally closed position at the end of May. So I was yield farming this pair for roughly 3 months, and my total profit is roughly 0.91 Ethereum. And during this whole time, I earned roughly 0.38 Ethereum and 5.25 Sol. So how do we actually allocate these fees that we earn for maximum profit? And I think a lot of problem people run into, like they're confused on what to do with the fees, or they're not completely sure how to put it to work, is because they haven't drawn like a diagram like this to break down the fees and their HODL positions, as well as other investments that they may have. For example, my flywheel might look something like this. If I already have a large DeFi portfolio, right, I might not put a lot of income from my job, and then I'm going to use some of the fees that I've generated to reinvest into DeFi, as well as add to my HODL bag that I don't yield farm with, and pay for some expenses, and potentially also diversifying into traditional finance. Stuff like stock index funds, those are also great investments to get into and reduce the risk and volatility of your portfolio. And if you guys draw a diagram like this for the DeFi portion, then it's much clearer where your funds are going to go. So this app is called Figma. I believe you could create up to 3 projects for free. And what I really like to do is draw this flowchart so I know exactly where to put my funds. And it could be different each month, right? Because sometimes the exchange rate you get is not good. For example, if Solana is not trading at a good price against Ethereum or Bitcoin, then I don't really want to use it to basically buy other assets, right? But if I believe that the exchange rate is pretty decent, I would use it to buy some stuff like Bitcoin or Ethereum to take profits on my fees. So that's one way you could use your fees. You could de-risk into Bitcoin like what I did with this pool here. I took the fees that I've earned and used it to just buy Bitcoin. And another thing you guys could do for lower cap altcoins, if we're expecting a parabolic move up, for example for Pixel to ETH, I believe that the prices would move up pretty sharply in the next 2 to 3 months. So what I did is I have these 2 Pixel to ETH pools, right? I separated the Pixel, added to my HODL bag, and then once again de-risk with my Ethereum to buy some more Bitcoin. And when the prices are low, I typically like to compound my investment. For example, this Bonk to ETH pool here, I compounded all of my fees. If the prices are trading near my entry, I'm happy to compound into this pool as well, because my entry would be roughly the same, right? Especially if I want a heavier allocation to Bonk, then that's exactly what I could do. But really, when the prices dip lower, let's say it goes all the way down here into this support, what I could do is I compound a lot of my fees from this position or other positions as well. And what it would do is actually drag down my average entry, right, to maybe something here, slightly below compared to what I started out with. So when the prices rebound, as long as it's above my entry, then I would have a net Ethereum profit in terms of my original liquidity. And the reason why is, if you guys think about it, right? We enter here on this green line at this current price here with Ethereum and Bonk in this case. Whatever's on top of the range is in Bonk, right? And then whatever's below is in Ethereum. As the price moves up, what the liquidity pool does is use my Bonk to be slowly sold into Ethereum at a higher average price than what I started out with. So that's why that's important, right? When you get a low entry and the prices are trading above, it's very easy to make a profit because your original liquidity is in profit and whatever you earn in fees are just on top. And if I'm bullish on this project, but the prices are trading below my entry, then that's the best time to compound my fees and drag down my entry. So that's the idea here. But sometimes if I already am too heavily allocated to a project, you could see this here with this arrow to ETH. I don't want to add too much into this pool, especially because this pool doesn't have too high of an APR. What I could do is compound a portion of my fees using only arrow, for example, and then use my ETH for other purposes. For this particular one, I just separated my ETH and then used it to hold Ethereum. And you can see this here with the base is for everyone meme coin. If you go back to my open position, this is the one. And I did the same thing with arrow because I don't want too heavy of an exposure into this pool. And then once again, I'm stacking the Ethereum part of my fees. But what about the pools that are trading above my entry? For example, MOG and ETH is trading above my entry. If I compound my fees in this case, instead of dragging down the entry, it would drag up my entry, right? And if the price of MOG retraces against Ethereum, it's easier for me to be at a net Ethereum loss in terms of liquidity that is inside the pool. You could still compound it if you want a higher allocation to these two tokens. But what I also like to do is de-risk with these fees. Just like how I did with the Sol to ETH pool here, I use this MOG portion to buy Bitcoin and then once again stack more Ethereum. So that's the first part of profiting more from your fees, is knowing when to compound and when not to. And the benefit of de-risking a portion of your fees is because sometimes these pools would struggle, right? If you guys look back at my open position, some of these pools have pulled back pretty sharply, especially this arrow pool or this AI XBT pool. I'm not always in profit, especially if we're yield farming smaller caps and the market has not been very strong, then this is very likely to happen. And it's just very nice to be buying stuff like Bitcoin or increasing your Ethereum stack every single month. And the second part of this is keep stacking Ethereum. The reason why I like to do this is because I could use this Ethereum to look for more yield farming pairs, right? And you guys could do this with Solana pairs as well. If you are super bullish on Solana, you could stack more and more Solana and look for more pairs to go into. When I have a good amount of Ethereum, let's say 2 Ethereum, I could basically set up a new pool, something like AI XBT, if I want more risk, or MOG, right? Or I could just create a new blue chip pool like Solana to ETH or ETH to Bitcoin to keep earning more and more fees to grow my DeFi portfolio. And this is exactly what I did over time. When I first started yield farming, I only have this Pixel to ETH pool. And over time, I've been able to build a wide variety of pools from the gains, which are then able to generate like $3,000 to $4,000 a month to fully replace my income. So that's very important, especially if you guys are under 6 figures in terms of crypto. You really want to be trying to stack more Ethereum and Bitcoin and try to add more and more investment into your DeFi portfolio and grow it so that you can make more and more income to eventually replace your job. We talked about this already, but what I also like to do is use this riskier token, for example MOG, to de-risk into either Bitcoin or Ethereum. I've been adding to my Bitcoin bag because I'm still over allocated to Ethereum, and over the next 6 to 12 months, my Bitcoin bag would be growing more and more. Essentially, my DeFi portfolio is allowing me to grow my Bitcoin stack over time for free. So I hope that helped, and I think it's very helpful to draw this diagram and separate the two portion of the fees rather than just, deleting this part, right? And only draw a diagram like this to, show what you're doing with the fees. Because a lot of times when I'm trying to optimize for max profit, if Solana is very weak, for example, maybe I don't want to sell a lot of it for Bitcoin, right? Maybe I want to use it to compound more into this pool. And this is exactly what I could do, right? Similar to this arrow to ETH pool here, if the exchange rate from Solana to Bitcoin is not good. That's why I like to separate these two tokens when I'm planning how I'm going to allocate my fees. And it doesn't take a lot of time at all. I only do this planning once a month, especially if you guys are running wide ranges. It shouldn't take too much time to manage. And before I hop off, I want to go over a few mistakes that I see people do. The first one is cashing out all of their profits without reinvesting into DeFi or into other investments. Let's say I have this DeFi income, right, that you guys saw earlier. This portfolio is generating a lot of fees, but let's say I don't reinvest into this portfolio or this HODL bag or this traditional finance bag. I just use it to pay for my expenses, right? Maybe my portfolio is worth only $50,000, but what's going to happen is sometimes you will make bad decisions or the market pulls back really hard because the crypto market is just very volatile. Then this DeFi portfolio could potentially shrink over time, especially if you guys are not consistently profitable yet. This would happen, and then eventually you will have to go back to your job because the ability to generate income is just going to decrease over time. And I see this all the time. People use the yield farming portfolio to pay for their expenses, but their actual balance of the portfolio just keeps dropping. So what I want to do instead is use a portion of my fees to at least compound into my DeFi portfolio. And depending on the market condition, I typically allocate roughly 25 to 75% of the fees that I've earned to compound back into my DeFi portfolio. And then I use the rest to buy other HODL investment like Bitcoin or Solana, as well as diversify into traditional finance investments. So don't try to basically live off of your DeFi portfolio very early on, especially if you're under six figures. You should be trying to grow your portfolio over time so then you could end up with more and more income. And the second mistake I see a lot of people do is they just keep reinvesting into DeFi and into riskier smaller caps. Like for example, this base is for everyone token or even this AI XBT token. If I just keep reinvesting into these pools, if these pools end up basically going to zero or not doing well, then my portfolio will struggle as well, right? Especially if I don't have a diversified yield farming portfolio. If I'm only yield farming like 3 to 4 pairs, for example, if all of those pairs are not doing well, then my portfolio is basically not going to do well. So instead, be sure to take out a portion of your fees into stables or Bitcoin, especially if you guys have to pay taxes. You do need to pay taxes on your fees, so be sure to take some profits every single month. And lastly, the main mistake again that we focus in this video is compounding when they should be exiting or de-risking. If the prices make a explosive move up, for example in terms of Bonk and ETH here, I could be exiting this pool entirely or at least sell a big portion of my fees because that's when the exchange rates are the best, right? When the prices are this high, it shouldn't be a point where I'm compounding my fees. I should be de-risking and taking profits on my fees instead. And once the prices are low once again, I could compound more and more of my fees if I want a heavier allocation to this particular pair. And you don't have to add to the same pool, right? A lot of times when larger cap altcoins are struggling, usually the altcoin market is struggling as well. So let's say I earn a lot of fees from Bonk and ETH, right? But I don't want to increase my allocation to Bonk. What I could do is sell some of my Bonk to basically hop into a new pool in whatever pair that I'm bullish on. For example, if I want to build a meme coin portfolio, I might start building a Pepe and ETH position with the fees instead. So that's it for the video, guys. I hope you found it helpful. That's how I usually use my fees, and it has worked out quite well for me in the past. If you guys are interested in learning more about yield farming and how to make consistent gains, there's a ton of videos on my channel that goes over the strategies, the mindsets, and the actual tactics of getting in and out of the pools, so be sure to check those out. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.